Number 5. Red rooms. I'm just gonna start this off by getting the obvious out of the way. This has nothing to do with the 50 Shades trilogy, so don't bother asking about that icky series that barely knows the truth about anything schmexy. Among the many illicit activities that take place on the dark web, one of the most disturbing is the existence of red rooms. So these rooms have gained a lot of attention and infamy, with many rumors and myths circulating about their existence and operation. While some people believe that red rooms are nothing more than urban legends, others claim to have witnessed them firsthand. So in fact, on Reddit, 4chan, and Hidden Wiki, a kind of, Cliff Notes for dark web beginners, you can find people trading second and third and fourth hand accounts of red rooms that have opened and closed. The concept of red rooms first apparently appeared on the dark web sometime in the early 2010s, and their name derives from the color of the room where the supposed acts take place. The term red room gained popularity after a Japanese animation featured a pop-up ad asking, "Do you like the red room?" And if users attempted to close the ad, a full-sized window would open with the names of individuals who had supposedly accessed the red room before and were found dead. The idea is that viewers pay to watch a live stream of a person being tormented and eventually killed, and they can even interact with the tormentor and other viewers through chat or messaging functions. Payments for these services are made in cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin to ensure, anonymity. Despite the attention that red rooms have received, it's kind of challenging to determine whether they actually exist or not. But here's the thing, accessing them is not as difficult as one might expect. A simple Google search for redroom.onion, that link can yield results for these supposedly hidden pages. In addition, the technical limitations of the dark web make it almost impossible to stream live video, and payment analyses suggest that there are very few people actually paying for these services. Some people claim to have accessed them and seen the gruesome acts taking place, while others insist that they are nothing more than hoaxes designed to scare people. There have been no verified cases of people being killed in real time on the dark web, and many experts believe that the concept of red rooms is more of a fantasy than a reality. One reason why it's so challenging to verify the existence of these red rooms is because the dark web is notoriously difficult to navigate and monitor. It's impossible to search for specific websites on the dark web using traditional search engines like Google or Bing, and accessing dark web sites requires specialized software like Tor or I2P. Furthermore, many dark websites used encryption and other security measures to protect their users' identities and activities, making it pretty challenging to track or trace them. However, there have been some instances where law enforcement agencies have claimed to have shut down red rooms or arrested their operators. In 2015, the FBI arrested a man named Peter Scully in the Philippines who was accused of running a red room called Daisy's Destruction. The site was said to feature videos of Scully harming young people, and it was allegedly one of the most extreme examples of a red room ever discovered. Scully was eventually convinced of multiple crimes, including, young people sexual harm, human selling, and killing. Internet users continue to seek out the elusive and horrifying red rooms on sites like Reddit and 4chan, despite many claims that, it's nothing more than an urban legend. But let me know your take in the comments. Honestly, I believe they're out there, but I've also watched way too many crime shows for my own good. Number 4. What's for sale? I have wandered many an oddities market in my time, and heck, I've even performed an act at one that would make most people flinch. I've seen folks selling real and fake bones, demonic dolls, niche, schmexy fine leather goods, vintage clothes, tarot readings, banned books, World War II memorabilia, and oddities I can't even begin to describe. And heck, that's just the stuff I can remember off the top of my head. So, what does the dark web have that I can't find in a niche marketplace? Oh, the no-no pills and powders. Sadly, I don't think I'm allowed to say the D word on here, so pardon me if things take a turn for the Looney Tunes way of speaking for safety's sake. I found plenty of tales on the interwebs about the crafty ways folks have been mailed their purchases. User OiRaves on Reddit is adamant that while he personally never received anything from any deep web affiliated sales folk, he did live with a roommate who would constantly receive the strangest brochures. At first, they would receive stuff for cruise lines, which he wrote off as junk mail, but they came so frequently and started getting stranger, making him suspicious. For folks like me who might be wondering how pamphlets can get strange, apparently the mail ranged from, Christian Mingle brochures to petting zoo brochures, pretty much, any kind of pamphlet for any and all services one could think of. At the time, our narrator kind of felt like someone was gaslighting him, but he never said anything, and the brochures would disappear as quickly as they came, so he didn't really have time to stress it. That is until one fateful day when he walked into his apartment and his roommate was delicately cutting into a brochure to mull out a small baggie of powder. All I'm gonna say is that it definitely wasn't flour or icing sugar. Now one time our narrator almost threw out a regular sized business envelope since after he opened it up, it looked similar to regular silly junk mail, until he noticed that the envelope had a hidden flap on the inside where there was no things. Other transportation or delivery methods known to the dark webs include using a comic book that's still in the plastic sealing, but the entire back page directly inside the cover was a sheet of acid, or a CD in a case, once again with the plastic sealed, and it looked totally ordinary until you peeled back the case artwork. In terms of how some folks get away with powders, pills, and other stuff, apparently the trick is to use collectible Pez dispensers already filled with pills that look like, yep, they've never been opened. Funny story actually about white powder. One time I was doing a virtual script reading of the incredible movie Ready or Not and had to mime using powder of my own, and I actually wound up inhaling way too much icing sugar up my nose, and oh my god, did it ever burn. Thankfully I was off screen after it for a while, so I was able to recover in private, but it will be a permanent memory for the rest of my life. Number 3, hire a hitman. Alrighty, so this is where things get a little more into the legend part of today's video. One of the greatest myths about the dark web is that you can hire an assassin, with some folks saying that that kind of service costs as little as, $5 grand. Just a couple of months of rent. We all have that kind of money lying around, right? In this economy? Here's the thing, officially speaking, technically no dark web search records were ever found of an actual hit attempt or assassin operating there. Now, I'm not saying it's never happened, since I don't exactly have the time or expertise to go deep diving for a week, to try to find a legitimate person selling those types of services, but what was found by experts? So a network of dark web websites and individuals who accepted Bitcoin in exchange for absolutely nothing at all. I get using Bitcoin for secrecy and all, but trust me when I say you'll never catch me using it as a form of payment. If I ever start talking about cryptocurrency on social media, assume I've been hacked or kidnapped. Scammers out there are relying on the veil of mystery that the dark web has provided, whereas in reality, more injuries and killings happen through Craigslist and similar websites that are widely available on the surface web. It took me a moment to research that one, but yep, people have actually hired hitmen off of Craigslist for crimes. Granted, it never seems to end like they want it, so I wouldn't really recommend it. Also, leaving a digital trail is always a mistake if you want to do something naughty. Now, I'm not speaking from experience, just common sense. Number 2, Silk Road. Silk Road was an online black market and the first modern darknet market that was launched back in 2011 by its American founder, Ross Ulbricht, under the pseudonym Dread Pirate Roberts. Hey look, I love a good reference to The Princess Bride, so that got me. The name Silk Road comes from a historical network of trade routes that were started during the Han Dynasty between Europe, India, China, and many other countries on the Afro-Eurasian landmass. 2 other individuals were also closely involved in the site's growth and success, known as Variety Jones and Smedley. In June of 2011, Gawker published an article about the site, which led to an increase in notoriety and website traffic. As part of the dark web, Silk Road operated as a hidden service on the Tor network, allowing users to buy and sell products and services between each other anonymously. To give you an idea of just how widespread it was, a former FBI special agent called it the Amazon of illicit substance sites. According to reliable sources, on Silk Road, you could buy no substances, illegal services, like hacking into private accounts, pirated content, fake passports, and more. All transactions were conducted with Bitcoin, which I guess it does help with protecting user identities, but yeesh. The website was known for its illegal substance marketplace, among other illegal and legal product listings. Between February of 2011 and July of 2013, the site facilitated sales amounting to around 9 million bitcoins. In May of 2013, Silk Road was taken down for a short period of time by a sustained DDoS attack. On June 23rd of 2013, it was first reported that the DEA seized 11.02 bitcoins, then worth a total of $814, which the media suspected was the result of a Silk Road honeypot sting. The FBI has claimed that the real IP address of the Silk Road server was found via data leaked directly from the site's CAPTCHA and was located in Iceland. IT security experts have doubted the FBI's claims because technical evidence suggests that no misconfiguration that could cause a specific leak was present at the time, but in October of 2013, the FBI shut down Silk Road and arrested Ross. Silk Road 2.0 came online the next month, run by former site administrators, but was shut down the following year as a part of Operation Onimus. Number 1, Mariana's Web. Already, not to be confused with Matt Webb, the fantastic guitarist from Mariana's Trench, one of my favorite bands, because goodness knows that could be an easy mistake. The legend of Mariana's Web appears to get its name from the deepest part of the ocean though, Mariana's Trench. It's apparently the deepest part of the dark web, a forbidden place of mysterious evil. Maybe. Depending on where you get your Mariana's Web myths, it's where you'll find the darkest secrets humanity has in its history, the secret location of Atlantis and the Vatican secret archives, or a database of archives belonging to the most powerful intelligence agencies on Earth. Now, if any of those titles sound familiar, I would recommend checking out some of the other content we put out here, since that's the type of stuff I like to talk about. But here's the thing, Mariana's Web is the definition of spooky BS, especially because it's technically impossible. It's supposedly only accessible through quantum computers, intruders, which really only exist in science fiction. This is once again where the legend part of today's title comes into play, but let me know in the comments if you think it exists, since honestly I wish it would. It would make my life a heck of a lot easier if I could hack into the Vatican archives and get the answers we all deserve.
Number 5. The plane crash of Halloween 1999. On October 31st, 1999, EgyptAir Flight 990 was making its regularly scheduled flight from Los Angeles to Cairo, with a scheduled layover in New York City. On the flight were 14 crew members and 203 passengers from all over the world. A half hour after leaving New York, while flying above international waters, the plane suddenly took a dive, falling towards the ocean at a rate of 39,000 feet per minute. The plane then entered a steep climb to try and recover before diving again and crashing into the Atlantic Ocean, 60 miles south of Nantucket Island. All 217 people on board were killed. Lacking the resources to mount an investigation themselves, the Egyptian government asked the American government to handle the investigation on their behalf to determine what had caused this fatal crash. Several theories were given as to the cause, such as mechanical failure or user error. A terrible new light was shone on the case once the investigators made the dive into the ocean to investigate the crash site. They didn't find much in the way of human remains, as the impact of the crash had eviscerated the passengers beyond recognition, prompting the investigators to have to use DNA recovered to identify the passengers and crew. While investigating the ocean floor, the divers managed to find the cockpit voice recorder intact. When they listened to the audio recording in time with the flight data record, which showed which buttons and levers had been used during the incident, they learned that the captain had excused himself to go to the washroom, leaving the first officer in charge of flying the plane. 30 seconds later, the first officer said the phrase, "I rely on God," before disengaging the autopilot and repeating the phrase and reducing the engine throttle to idle, and putting the plane into a nosedive, and repeating the phrase, "I rely on God," over and over again, until the captain can be heard returning to the cockpit, screaming and demanding to know what's happening, and trying to get the officer away from the engine controls. The flight control data showed that the pilot tried to pull the plane up using his controls, but that the first officer continued to push his down and caused the plane to crash. The Egyptian government disputed the evidence and labeled the incident an accident, but it was later learned that the first officer had recently been reprimanded for misconduct and had found out that he was going to be demoted by the chief of EgyptAir's pilot group, who was also aboard the flight. Although the official crash does not state the reason for the crash beyond a vague mention of improper operation, it is difficult to listen to the black box tape and think that this was anything other than an intentional crash.
Number 4. The Dyatlov Pass. The Dyatlov Pass incident is one of the most bizarre, unexplained mysteries of the 21st century, and should be enough to chill you to your core. A few photos were recovered from the incident, but none of them really were any aid into uncovering what truly happened that trip on Mount Torton in the north of Soviet Russia. The last photo ever taken of the group shows them marching forward, triumphantly, yet unknowingly into their demise. In 1959, 9 hikers set out to climb a mountain range together as part of an expedition. Their leader, Igor Alexeyevich Dyatlov, organized the outing as a fun thing to do with some friends. He'd promised that he would send a letter back to his sporting club with a photo of them at the peak of the mountain when they got there. Unfortunately, neither would ever come to pass. It became very apparent that the hikers were taking much longer to return than they were supposed to, with weeks passing without anyone making any contact whatsoever, prompting the Russian authorities to launch a search party in an effort to find them. This would end up taking months of foraging through the wilderness, before eventually finding the remains of the hikers and uncovering one of the most baffling mysteries. The group were found in a few clusters, not all in one place. Some of them had been found huddled together in a cave. Some of them had been found naked, face down in the snow, outside of a tent that had been cut open from the inside, with scattered boots, coats, and gear strewn all around. Concerningly, some of the bodies had been damaged in inexplicable ways, with their eyes and tongues being cut out, whereas others had such intense physical trauma that coronary reports said it seemed as if they'd been struck by cars. On some of the bodies recovered, personal affects from other hikers in the group were found, like torn bits of fabric or clothing or small trinkets. But perhaps most puzzling of all these strange details is that there was trace amounts of radiation discovered on some of the bodies. Just about every single piece of evidence for the Dyatlov Pass incident only serves to confuse more, like a box of puzzle pieces that just don't fit together. Now, something like this is just rife for conspiracy. I imagine I told you about it now and you're already trying to put it together in your head. The more grounded theories suggest that it could have been an avalanche that disrupted the hikers, and the naked ones had torn their clothes off in a rush, perhaps, or maybe a symptom of hypothermia, where an extreme symptom shows that as the body reaches a death state, you feel warmer and warmer. The hole in this theory, though, is that the area was not well known for avalanches, and also the hikers were all fairly experienced, who were unlikely to make such an amateur mistake picnic, camping in a site known for avalanches. The more extreme conspiracies suggest that there was some kind of cryptid attack like a Yeti, or even government testing. Some have offered the idea that the trace amounts of radiation might have been proof that the Russian government was testing some sort of top secret weapon. Some have offered that maybe some bizarre mind control program went wrong and caused the group to turn on each other. In the end, the case was closed, and the government ruled that the hiker's death was some sort of natural force, sort of as a stand-in for a real answer. The case would eventually be reopened in 2019, but once again the Russian government deduced with all the information they had that they believe it to be an avalanche of some sort. But whether or not that's truly what happened, we may never know. That lies with the hikers.
Number 3. Alien autopsy. In 1995, a London-based entrepreneur named Ray Santilli came forward claiming that he had come into possession of black and white footage that had been given to him by an anonymous retired military cameraman. The footage had apparently been taken in 1947 following the infamous flying disc crash in Roswell, New Mexico, and showed a dead alien being subjected to an autopsy by medical examiners. The footage was broadcast on the Fox network, being hosted by Star Trek Next Generation star Jonathan Frakes, and featuring interviews with practical special effects genius Stan Winston, as well as the forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht and cinematographer Alan Davio, speculating on whether or not the techniques used in the film were indicative of a hoax or not. The program was rebroadcast twice, getting higher and higher ratings each time before eventually being made available on home video. After years of speculation and allegations of fraud, Ray Santilli admitted that the footage broadcast was not actually a real autopsy, but a recreation of one, based on footage that the alleged military cameraman had offered to sell him. By the time Santilli had raised the required funds, the film had apparently degraded due to heat and humidity and was not in usable condition. He had then recreated the original film to the best of his ability, using a fabricated dummy of an alien body that was filled with raspberry jam as well as chicken knuckle joints, entrails, and sheep brains that they had bought from a local butcher. Ray claimed that most of the original footage had been lost to time, with only a few usable frames having survived. He said that these frames had been edited into the final film alongside his faithful recreation. Was this fraud footage really based on a real recording of an alien autopsy that was lost to the ravages of time? Does the supposed recreation really feature frames of the real medical examination? If so, which frames among the frauds feature the real alien corpse? We may never know for certain.
Number 2. Michael Rockefeller. Michael Rockefeller was born with a silver spoon in his mouth to a lineage of millionaires in the late 1930s. Pretty good start. He had the keys to the kingdom to pursue whatever he wanted. At the time, his great-grandfather John Rockefeller was one of the richest men to ever live. His family had hoped that he would follow in their footsteps towards the family business, but Michael had a bit of wanderlust in his heart and wanted a life more exciting than spending his days looking at the inside of corporate boardrooms and standing by water coolers. He had an interest in anthropology, specifically indigenous art from Nigerian, Mayan, and Aztec cultures. It was here where Michael discovered a passion. His father sat on the board of a museum in New York and gave Michael a position on the same board. He hoped to one day open a collection of indigenous art in New York. After discussions with the Dutch Museum of Ethnology, Michael had decided he would set out to a massive island off the coast of Australia, which at the time was known as Dutch New Guinea, in 1961. He would then go to collect the art of the Asmat people who were indigenous to the island. It would be a one-way trip. The Asmat people he was going to study and collect art from were very isolated from the rest of the world. They had seen Dutch colonizers before, but otherwise not much contact from other people. The Asmat believed that the land beyond their island was inhabited by spirits, and they saw the Europeans and Americans as supernatural beings that had come over from across the sea. Michael and his team were allowed to study the people and live amongst them, but were barred from purchasing or taking any of their artifacts, which understandably they liked a lot and had a great deal of significance to them. Nonetheless, Michael was thrilled with the experience and everything they had been finding, and could not wait to open his own exhibit. In November 1961, Michael was on a boat accompanied by some other anthropologists, when a sudden squall in the water threw the boat off its course. They were 12 miles from the shore, and the boat was capsizing, but Michael insisted he could swim to it. This was the last time anyone ever saw Michael Rockefeller. From here, the Rockefellers spent a small fortune trying to find Michael, undertaking a search party which took weeks and weeks, but never uncovered a body. That was until years and years later, when the case was reopened, and officers and investigators discovered through communication with the Asmat tribe that Michael hadn't been lost in the water as they thought, but rather was sacrificed as part of a ritual. His head was chopped chopped off, his flesh eaten, his bones made into weaponry. An investigator, Carl Hoffman, had uncovered all of this while filming the Azmat people. He saw a group of men acting out, mimicking the act of dragging someone, attacking them with spears, and chopping someone's head off. The footage of this film couldn't be found, but through interpretation and translation, Hoffman heard a stern warning to the other villagers. A brief excerpt. Now, don't you tell this story to any other man or any other village, because this story is only for us. Don't speak. Don't speak and tell this story. I hope you remember it and you must keep this for us. I hope this is for you and you only. Don't talk to anyone forever to other people or another village. If people question you, don't answer. Don't talk to them because this story is only for you. If you tell it to them, you'll die. I'm afraid you will die.
Number 1. A mysterious audio recording. Clement Moore was a regular family man from the city who wanted to trade the hustle and bustle for a more simple life with his wife and children in the country. They sold their house in Toronto, Ontario, and bought a farm, hoping to receive some peace and quiet after years in the noisy city. At first, things seemed almost too good to be true as they adjusted to life on the farm and the challenges that entailed. But their beloved peace and quiet came crashing down around them during the family's first winter on the farm. One night, Clement had put his children to bed and was settling down with his wife, getting ready for a nice long sleep after a long day of chores, when he heard a loud clattering sound coming from outside. He sprang from his bed and tore open the window to see what was causing so much noise. His eyes were filled with wonder and terror as he saw some kind of unidentified flying object hovering outside his home. The UFO was making a strange jingling sound, almost as if it was ringing bells. He grabbed his phone and started recording, hoping to get clear footage of the craft, but it disappeared from sight. But the ordeal was not over as he heard the craft make a landing on his roof. He rushed downstairs planning on getting a recording of the craft, but stopped in his tracks when he realized that the pilot of the craft was in his home. Moore describes the alien as being large and covered in head-to-toe fur and having twinkling eyes with rosy cheeks and a cherry-like nose with a wreath of smoke circling his head. He was carrying some kind of bag and was leaving strange tokens in the family's living room. The strangeness of the encounter made Clement laugh in spite of himself, which made the alien aware of his presence. The alien then seemed to wink at him before jerking around and being beamed back to his craft through the chimney. The craft flew away and Clement checked his recording of the incident only to discover that the footage had been corrupted and only the audio of the incident remained. Much of it was garbled, but as the UFO flies away, you can clearly hear the strange red alien exclaim, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night."
Coming in at number 5, Edarem. Holding the title of the creepiest person on YouTube is a big feat, especially considering YouTube is filled with all sorts of creepy people and nightmares that will haunt you while you sleep. However, there's someone out there on the platform that fits the entire description. His name is Edward Mescare, also known as Edarem. Now, when you first look at the channel, it just seems like some regular old man trying his best to scare children. However, if you take a look at some of his videos, you will discover some of the creepiest things you are ever going to watch on the internet. Now, some of the videos are outright creepy, others are comical, but it's once you learn the dark history of this man that things become truly terrifying. What may look like a video of just an old guy dancing to Pretty Woman, things get disturbing once you discover he was imprisoned for sexual battery and ultimately died in jail. However, his legacy lives on through his horrifically creepy videos that will most definitely keep you up tonight. Coming in at number 4, YouTuber records their neighbor 7,000 times. A channel by the name of This, which is simply Angry Neighbor spelled backwards, is a channel created by a person who was seemingly fed up with their noisy neighbors next door, so he/she decided they would record them and post the audio clips online for all to listen to. Now, it perhaps doesn't sound that crazy. The reasoning could be anything. Maybe they couldn't get the authorities to act, so they took matters into their own hands and got the evidence they needed. However, this is where things got a little odd. They didn't just record 1 or 2 noisy parties. No, instead they recorded over 7,400 clips of the noisy neighbors. Yep, you heard me correctly, 7,400. However, what's odd about the entire thing is that most of these audio clips are completely innocuous. The sounds of people calmly talking or simply laughing. Other clips are just the sounds of faint conversations happening. Take a listen. This instead means that the uploader is recording voices only they can hear, considering the noises we hear are just the standard sounds of people living their day-to-day lives. The reason this is so creepy is simply because we have no idea what's going on and we likely never will know. One audio recording that was uploaded is about drums and construction, which does have a little noise. Around halfway through the video there are two bangs that come from the neighbours, we assume anyway. However, saying that the loudest noise in the video is sounds of crickets, as well as the sound of cracking twigs as though someone is sneaking around on another person's property and attempting to remain hidden. However, the creepiest part happens around 3 minutes 28 seconds when you can clearly hear children's feet running past the recorder, meaning they either planted the recorder in the home or they are crouching in the bushes spying on children. It's all very concerning and bizarre. Coming in at number 3, real-time death counter. Now this website is exactly how it sounds. It is a real-time death counter across the entire world. With over 7 billion people in the world, it is difficult to quantify exactly how many people die at any given moment. Now, it's not because we don't have the technology to keep track, it's simply because death isn't the most noteworthy thing to keep track of, sadly because it happens so often. Now Bradley decided to create a real-time simulation of all the deaths happening across the globe at any given moment. It's incredibly accurate too, as it's based on numbers taken from every single country. Now this is of course incredibly upsetting and not something that is easy to look at considering how many red dots pop up every single second on the site. But if you're ever in the mood for a visual representation of the fragility of life, this is the place to go. Certainly keeps you grounded and thankful for the time you have on this planet. Time is fleeting, make sure you live it up while you can. Coming in at number 2, plane crash info. Most people have a morbid fascination with death. It's the reason why we all crane our necks when we pass a car crash or our ears perk when we hear a siren. We're interested for some very bizarre reason. So when a plane goes down, we are all left in utter disbelief, but at the same time are intrigued to learn of all the details as to what went down. As we know, advancements in aviation technology have progressed to the point that we need not worry when we board a plane about it going down. Each and every year, fewer and fewer people pass away from aviation accidents, so much so that when it happens, it shocks the entire world. Think Kobe Bryant. So saying that crashes still happen, though they may show up just as numbers to us, people still pass away. Now there is a real website that tracks all of these aviation accidents, specifically what goes on right before the plane crashes. The website is called Plane Crash Info. It's a regularly updated database of all plane crashes in history, with detailed info of what exactly happened and why the plane went down. It's of course incredibly heartbreaking and unsettling to read about, considering these aren't just numbers, these are people's lives that were lost. Not to mention there is a section on the site called Last Words, which are audio clips from the cockpit voice recorder just moments before the crash. Now the site does have legitimately good intentions as it tries to document plane crashes for the sake of record keeping. That still doesn't stop it from being disturbing and saddening to read about though. And finally coming in at number 1, become a horse. Okay, I understand that life can be challenging. We're born, we work, we pay taxes, then we move on. Okay, we die. It doesn't seem fair now, does it? However, there are people out there in the world that want to mix things up. They want a new experience and not necessarily a human experience. No, they want to be a horse. Yes, you heard me correctly. A horse. They want to eat grass and graze in peace. What's wrong with that? However, there is a difference between wanting to be something and actually getting experimental surgery, Tusk style, to make it happen. According to the creator of If Wishes Were Horse, many people out there in the world have an aching desire to abandon their hands for hoofs and escape the complexities of human existence. Just listen to this excerpt from the site. I quote, "The horse's sexual appeal should be mentioned too. Not for nothing do we flatter or tease each other with terms like stud, stallion or filly. Many find the notion of becoming a horse quite erotic, but for most the notion of transforming into a horse or any other animal is a plea for escape from our increasingly complex lives." Now there are real people out there that are carefully planning their human to horse transition. I quote, "Feet, tail and ears especially can cause confusing sensations. All will be emitting different signals to those received as a human. Phantom finger syndrome is common but quickly fades as the mind acclimatizes. Now it is all good and well wearing hoofs and fake ears. What is truly crossing the line is when experimental surgery comes into play. I quote, "Science here and now could turn you into a horse. I mean that. Skeletons can be altered, skin and hair can be grafted, prosthetics can be designed. Genetic mapping is only just beginning to illuminate super healing properties latent within our bodies. You might only be able to become a cosmetic copy and you might have to put up with being a very small horse. but it is possible.
Number 5. The Max Headroom incident. A personal favorite, easily my favorite unexplained mystery in history. It's a small one, but it's my favorite, is the Max Headroom incident. Max Headroom was the name of a character played by Matt Frewer, a British comedian portraying an artificially generated anchorman in a dystopian world 20 minutes into the future. They were actually way ahead of their time with AI business on Max Headroom. The character was known for his strange, jilted speech, chaotic editing style, and a comedy in a way that was just a teeny bit scary. All of that meant that Max was the perfect avatar for a signal hijacking pirate to use for the funniest unexplained mystery ever put to air. WGN-TV was a local TV station in Chicago, Illinois. During a local news bulletin on November 22nd, 1987, viewers were interrupted watching the news to a 20-second clip of a man in a Max Headroom costume dancing erratically in front of a sheet metal screen. The incident scared the staff, but not half as much as Max's second interruption. Later that same evening, the hacker would strike again, this time during an episode of Doctor Who. Blimey! This time Max's invasion came complete with audio, which was a low, scary drone accompanied by Max blurting out complete non sequiturs. Catch the wave, there's still an X there, there's really something about it. Even though the clip is silly, it's a joke, the buzz of the signal combined with Max's uncanny, terrifying appearance in the mask and nonsensical sayings are really creepy, like an auxiliary nightmare. "I just made a masterpiece for all the world's greatest newspaper nerds," is a particularly good line out of his rant, amidst quoting a few ad campaigns, television shows, songs, and general absurdities. The reason I love the Max Headroom incident so much is that the hackers had this golden opportunity. You know, they hijacked a TV station, they had everyone in Chicago watching, and they had absolutely no message, no meaning, no greater goal. They were just doing it for kicks. They were trolling before trolling was even a thing. The clip ends with Max being spanked by a woman in a maid outfit while he yells, "They're coming to get me!" Flawless, no notes. So who was this Max Headroom imposter? Who hijacked the station? That's the thing, we don't know and we never will. He covered his tracks well, he got away with it. The only person who knows who was under that mask was the man wearing it. As such, he remains the most famous and most legendary signal intrusion. Catch the wave. And if you're looking for more scary videos that might have Max Headroom and might not, we've got all of that and then some on Top 5 Scary. The odds are very good if it's freaky. We've done a video or 2 or 3 on it. So hit subscribe. Please make sure to hit that little bell so you don't miss a scream. But do that at the end of this video, okay? Because I got way more scary, unexplained videos coming up for you right now. Number 4, the Serbian dancing woman. If you've been scrolling through TikTok lately, there's a very good chance you've seen word or you've heard of the Serbian dancing woman. While the mystery is purported to have started all the way back in the 90s, it only came to light recently when it was posted to TikTok. Now, the exact details in all of this are a bit wrapped in mystery, but that's what makes it so darn interesting. It's a list of top 5 mysterious videos after all. There are videos all over the app and the rest of the net, and they all feature a mysterious, unidentified Serbian woman dancing in the pale moonlight, who by all accounts you do not want to interrupt lest you face grave consequences. Who is she? Where did she come from? Why is she dancing in the street? What is she listening to? Which is very important. Does she just have rhythm in her heart? Or is it something darker? Now, there are more than a few stories of TikTok users who've claimed that they have encountered the dancing woman up close, and we'll share a story or 2 and I'll let you decide if they're just tall tales or true stories. A TikToker going by the name of Nico was walking with his mother when they saw the lady dancing in the street. She charged at the 2 of them, claiming herself to be the ambassador of death, and claimed that she needed Nico's mother's life for a ritual to resurrect an old Serbian king. Now, another TikToker by the name of Solomon, who says he was friends with Nico, reports that after Nico saw the dancing lady, he got a little jealous and wanted to find her too. And after weeks of searching, found her, introduced himself, and she screamed that she was going to take his soul. Of course, it's important to remember anyone on TikTok or the internet can go on and just say anything, but really, would someone on the internet really look into a camera and just tell lies? I don't think people would do that. Number 3, blank room soup. I have seen a lot of odd videos in my time. It's literally my job to watch odd videos. But every now and again, I come across something that sticks with me and leaves an awful taste in my mouth. Well, there's nothing quite like the taste of blank room soup. This next very strange video, often referred to as blank room soup or some variation thereof, depicts someone who seems to be being held hostage by giant pop vinyls, strange men in mascot costumes. Now the actual content of blank room soup is pretty bare. One man is being held by the mascots, slurping down what looks like a bowl of ramen or pho, and it's pretty hard to make out if he's laughing, crying, screaming, or some horrible combination of all three. He's had his eyes blacked out and censored, so it's pretty hard to tell what's going on. Legend has it that this video came from the dark web and was found there, but with a little digging we can try and find some of its actual history. Now there are tons of wild theories ranging from strange capture and interrogation, satanic rituals and cults, or bizarre esoteric performance art. Getting to the bottom of this video is a tough one. Amateur sleuths traced the costumes back to an artist named Raymond Percy, who created the characters for performance art, but this video didn't come from Percy, who reported that the outfits he had made were stolen from his van, meaning the people in this video could have been who stole his costumes. So what do you think? Is this bizarre video footage of a dark, deep web crime? Or is it just an incredibly bizarre auteur art piece we couldn't hope to understand? I know if I was an esoteric artist, I would definitely lie and say that someone stole my costumes and not that I did it. Regardless of its original intention, the video is deeply disturbing, and there's something about it that just makes me feel sticky and makes me want to sit down in the shower. It's gonna be puzzling us for as long as we have to think about it, which honestly, I hope is not much longer. I hope I'm done. Oh, yeah, I am. Number 2, happy anniversary. Up next is going to be the sincerely disturbing clip referred to as happy anniversary. If only it was as nice as that title implied. In 2004, a woman by the name of Maura Murray went missing under bizarre circumstances. She'd emailed her boss telling them that she'd be out of work for a death in the family and then left on a road trip. But there was no death in the family, and after a car crash, she was never seen again. Now the case as a whole is fascinating, and if you're interested in true crime, there's enough fodder for a full video out there, and better YouTubers than me have done stories on it, so look up Maura Murray after. But why am I telling you all this? Well, because this video was posted 8 years to the day of Maura's disappearance, titled Happy Anniversary. And the account was owned by a user named Mr. 112 Dirtbag, and Maura went missing on Route 112. More than a bit of a coincidence there. Now the video in question is deeply unsettling, even without that context. It's just an old man cackling to himself maniacally, winking to the camera and spouting words out in a foreign language. Now allegedly this video was sent to the Murray family by the upload. Police looked at it and deemed it inconsequential to the investigation. This dismissal led some internet sleuths to start theorizing that this was just a deeply, profoundly mentally unwell man who had become obsessed with the case and was trying to involve himself in any way he could as a fan of sorts. Now the original video and the original Mr. 112 Dirtbag channel were both taken down off of YouTube, although they've since been mirrored. The trail goes cold there. Maura Murray was tragically never found. Was this video a part of the puzzle? Was it just a lone man rambling into his camera seeking the attention of a grieving family? Not that that's any better. The video is still incredibly creepy regardless of how you look at it. And number 1, dining room in and out. I don't think I meant to put this at the number 1, but it is what it is. Coming in next on our list of strange, inexplicable videos that have been baffling internet viewers for years and years is this bizarre little clip titled Dining Room In and Out. Now the clip is very short, showing the world's worst dining party. A meal is set out, but only one guest has arrived to eat it. A pale-faced woman caked in makeup, making her look inhuman, or like that girl in the Radiator out of Eraserhead for all my Lynch heads out there. She mumbles something incoherent as the camera pulls back on her and she falls face first into a bowl. The scene flips back on itself. The doll-like woman looks up and says, "There is nothing." Eerie, short, sticks with you. I'm gonna be thinking about it the rest of my life. What is the purpose of this video and where did it come from? Who made it and why? Well, unlike a lot of the stranger videos out there and the ones on this list, there is actually a lot of answers on this, and I will spoil it just a little bit. The Dining Room was a short experimental film directed by independent director David B. Earl, who was taking large swaths of inspiration from David Lynch for his work. If you're not already a fan, Lynch is famous for depicting nightmarish scenes of suburban life, bringing unsettling terror to fairly mundane things: a small logging town, a diner, a radiator, the planet Arrakis, you know. The dining room short was intended as a nihilistic commentary on the afterlife, or lack thereof. The intention was for this clip to repeat endlessly, with the only dialogue being the doll saying, "There is nothing," in reference to the lack of an afterlife. All there is life and death and top 5 scary videos. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.
In 5th place, we have high school. Ryan Draper and Tori Adamczyk were students at Pocatello High School in Idaho that were interested in films and decided to try to record their own. It starts off innocent enough, with a frame showing a crowded high school hallway before cutting to the night of September 22nd. I believe we have the video, so you can see the transition for yourself right now. The two boys are in a car, and you can overhear Brian saying, "We're here in this car." The time is 9:50, September 22nd, 2006. Unfortunately, we have the grueling task of killing our two friends, and they are right in that house just down the street. Tori goes on to explain that they had already been hanging out with the soon-to-be victim that evening, Cassie Jo Stoddart, while she was, house sitting for her aunt and uncle on Whispering Cliffs Drive in northeast Bannock County. Her boyfriend Matt Beckham had also been in attendance for the hangout, but went home before the unfortunate events. Cassie had given the friends a tour of the house, including the basement. She was house sitting for her aunt and uncle. The 4 teens went into the living room to watch a movie, but the would-be criminals left before the film ended, claiming they wanted to watch a movie at the local movie theater instead. She was unaware that before the boys left, Brian had unlocked the basement door so that he and Tori could re-enter the house undetected. Sometime after leaving the house on Whispering Cliffs, the duo returned to the neighborhood, parked down the street, got out of their car, and put on costumes consisting of dark clothing, gloves, and white painted masks. The boys entered the house through the basement door that had been left unlocked, while the couple that was left there were watching television in the living room, as planned, intentionally making loud noises when they got downstairs in an unsuccessful attempt to lure the couple down there. When that didn't work, they found the circuit breaker and turned off the power in the house, hoping, 1 or 2 of them would come down to check the breaker, but that didn't work either, and they were freaking out upstairs. At approximately 10:30 p.m., Matt's mother picked him up, leaving Cassie at the house alone. He called Tori's cell phone to see where he and Brian were, and could barely hear him since he was whispering, so Matt assumed the boys were at the movie theater, as planned. Eventually, the boys went upstairs, armed with stabby implements, and attacked and ended the life of Cassie. Afterwards, they filmed their conversation. Why not? With Brian clearly stating that they just killed Cassie, just left her house, and that it wasn't a bleeping joke. He further elaborated on how he impaled her in the throat and saw her lifeless body. A lot of which nope, can't say that here. The footage in total is over half an hour, and it made me sick to my stomach to watch. Both boys were arrested on September 27th, 2006, and eventually received sentences of life imprisonment without parole. Good riddance. In 4th place, we have the elusive White Lady of Union Graveyard. Located in Connecticut, Lorraine Warren, one of our favorite people, used to often take walks through the cemetery in question, saying that it was one of the most haunted places around. Now her husband, Ed, caught the White Lady on camera on September 1st of 1990 at 2:40 a.m. during his 7th night in a row of filming at the cemetery. Determined to have footage as proof, and we can show some of that footage to you now. He described dark figures surrounding her, shapes that he described as wood ghosts that seemed to jump on her while they all argued. Who is this mysterious lady? Because I love a good spooky lady. It's believed she is Harriet Seeley, whose young son passed shortly after being born, and Harriet herself passing soon after. Legend believes she may have died in hopes of finding her son, and still wanders her final resting place searching him out. She's described as a young woman wearing a white dress with dark hair. Many who have witnessed her believe they have almost hit her with their vehicle, only to find no trace of her once they pull over. Others claim they have often seen her hovering slightly above the ground around the cemetery, going back and forth amongst different gravestones. In 1993, local firefighter Glenn Powell received a call about a transformer explosion and drove to the scene of the incident with a police officer and observed a female driver following closely behind him on the road. He remembers the night sky had turned pink, and the explosion emitted large amounts of electricity that made the hair in his arms stand up at a close distance. Glenn was driving along the road beside the cemetery when the officer seated next to him yelled, "Watch out!" In the middle of the road was a woman with long brown flowing hair and wearing a white Victorian nightgown. Glenn described seeing a surprised look on her face before slamming on the brakes, but was unable to avoid hitting her, describing it like hitting a brick wall with the back of his truck flying into the air and the policeman next to him being launched into the dashboard. The driver behind him jumped out of the car and helped the two men search the area of the crash to check on the woman, but she was gone. Glenn is quoted as saying there was no red fluid, there was no clothing, there was no body, there was nothing. The footage of the White Lady was considered lost for many years, never making its way to the internet until after the passing of the Warrens, when their son-in-law Tony found the tape in a lost corner and uploaded it here to the interwebs. Glad we've got it. In third place, we have lake monster footage. In June of 2009, a cell phone video of a creature swimming in Lake Champlain near Oakledge Park in Burlington got some attention. The nearly 2-minute long video, taken by Burlington resident Eric Olson, shows a creature moving across the mouth of the small cove and beach area at the park. At several points during the video, the whatever it is appears to raise its head about a foot or more above the water's surface. Other times, a portion of what appears to be a torso, several feet in length, can also be seen. Eric has been adamant in saying that he was simply filming the water when he noticed the cryptid and tried to zoom in on it. He says that anyone watching it can see that whatever it was moving both horizontally across the water and vertically, going under the surface and coming back up. He described it as looking very long, but not very wide. Now, Lauren Coleman is a cryptozoologist based in Portland, Maine, and said what Olson filmed with his phone is the best evidence to date of what residents on both sides of Lake Champlain would prefer to call champ. He stated that the video should be forensically analyzed and broken down frame by an expert. Before that day, the best known champ evidence was a photo taken in 1977 by Sandra Mancy of Bristol while she was having a picnic on the lake with her family. The photo was verified as legitimate and later appeared in Time magazine and the New York Times. I'm sorry, who was gonna tell me there's oodles of evidence of a sea monster here in Canada? Yikes! In second place, we have stalker footage. Parasocial relationships are the incredibly terrifying, one-sided bond a fan or follower think they have with a public figure, and sadly can lead to scary stories. I'm speaking from experience, and this is one point I won't be elaborating on. Icelandic pop star Björk learned this, sadly, when an American fan sent her an explosive device in disguise and then, offed himself, leaving behind 22 hours of videotape. Ricardo Lopez was described by his peers as extremely bright, but dropped out of high school to become an artist. As well as the videotapes, he left behind an 803-page handwritten diary full of the musings of, someone embarrassed by his body and awkward around girls. Okay, but I'm not a killer. Ricardo escaped his life by reading about the glamorous world of celebrities, fixating on Björk as his muse that he created art around. But soon the fan love entered the gray area of obsession. And that's the danger zone of being a fan. He recorded himself talking to the camera, saying that being in love, having an infatuation is a euphoric feeling, and he was very happy. He had something to look forward to every day. The diary shows how the fantasy eventually turned, more and more consuming, and how Ricardo slowly became less and less anchored in reality. 3 years into his obsession, he read that Björk had a lover, and he wrote in his diary about his sadistic plans to inflict pain onto her. Ricardo constructed an explosive device using sulfuric acid and placed it inside a hollowed-out book, also forging a letter from her record company telling her the book was for a future project. We actually have footage of him building that device, and I'll let that play now. He managed to acquire the address for her London home and mailed the package off, in hopes that she would open it and it would explode right in her face. Ricardo went home, still savoring the drama after he mailed it off. One tape showed him saying to the camera, "It went off almost without a hitch. I'm shaking more and more, but I was real cool in there, just a little bit nervous." With his device now almost at Björk's doorstep, Lopez began the final act for his tape, taking his life. In his video, Ricardo said he knew many killers had families that were brutal, but said his own family was normal and kind, and he played Björk's music in the background. His last words were, "This is for you," before pulling the trigger. On the video, a kaboom noise rang out, but there was no visible fluids. Ricardo just groaned and fell out of frame. Police found his body 4 days after the incident and were able to stop the package 1 day before it caused the intended harm. On September 16th of 1996, police found the camera and a videotape labeled The Last Day. Several other cassettes were also nearby, and personally this is the scariest video for me today. I've watched enough Criminal Minds to know premeditated killings are a thing, but this is a whole other level of terrifying. Oh, people. In first place, we have the Paris Catacombs. For those who do not know, the Catacombs are a series of underground tunnels that are located underneath Paris that were created during the late 18th century to help alleviate the city's cemetery shortage crises. Fun fact, there are approximately 6 million bodies buried in the catacombs alone, which, you're the one, that's a lot of ghosties. In recent times, however, the catacombs have become a popular place for urban explorers, who have dubbed themselves cataphiles. One significant example of this is a man who took some footage of the catacombs of Paris sometime in the early 1990s. I'll kick this off with a snippet now before I describe it. The footage, which was shot on a black and white video recorder, starts as rather unremarkable, with the man exploring around the catacombs, and hey, he even picks up a few bones along the way. Wouldn't recommend it, but he did. As the video goes on, however, the man begins to walk at a faster pace before breaking into a run and drops the camera before running off into the darkness. It landed in a puddle on its side, and that's where it stayed as it filmed the man's feet running away. The point of view shot became disorienting as he ran, swinging from tunnel to tunnel, seeming to reflect his confusion about which one he should run down next. Sometime after that, the footage was found by a different group of cataphiles in one of the deepest areas of the catacombs, before being acquired by a documentarian by the name of Francis Friedland. He later presented the footage on the second episode of the ABC Family Show, Scariest Places on Earth, in the year 2000. Nobody has stepped up after the initial airing of the episode nearly 2 decades ago, including Friedland himself. Nobody has stepped up after the initial airing of the episode over 2 decades ago, including Friedland himself. No one knows what happened to the man in the video or who he was to this day.
Number 5 on this list is the Paraguayan tape. So there really isn't any given name for this, but I'm calling it the Paraguayan tape because this footage was discovered in Paraguay several years ago. The footage only really surfaced a few years ago, but it was actually filmed way before that. This footage was taken back in 1994 by what looks to be some children. The clip itself is an amalgamation of a bunch of several second long clips that don't really make a cohesive narrative but are just super eerie. This, also coupled with the audio, makes this clip extremely scary. The audio is a bunch of screams and cries and weird noises that don't even sound human. Some people have chalked it up to being the poor recording equipment, but I really don't think so. Let's play you guys 30 seconds of this clip so you can get an idea what this thing is all about. So that's the first 30 seconds of the video, and as we can see, it's just super creepy. Also, at the end of the clip there, it looked like several teens were running to help one of their friends up off the ground. So either that friend tripped and fell or was attacked by something, and it's tough to say. No one knows what happened to these kids who recorded this or why they made it in the first place. Although I would wager a bet that something bad probably transpired. Everything that I've seen here looks like all the telltale signs of demonic intervention. Let's just hope that this clip wasn't actually the last documented video of these people alive. Number 4 on this list is Deep in the Woods. Back in 2006, there were 2 men who disappeared off the face of the earth. No one knew what happened to them or where they went. That picture got a lot clearer though when this video popped up. In 2007, a YouTube channel called LH posted this clip that was presumably filmed back in 2006. The video follows the exploits of these 2 young men in what the viewer is led to believe is their last moments on planet Earth. The 2 men start out by driving their car into the woods. They pass by a gate and then get to another one which they can't seem to open for some reason. They then get their flashlights and proceed into the darkness on foot. This is where it all goes to hell though. In the clip that I'm about to show you, we will see these 2 men walking through the woods and hear a loud animalistic noise. Then something will jump out at them, so fair warning. So as we can see, a creature lunged forward at the 2 men and got them running back to the car. Then the camera dropped and presumably this was the end of our 2 lads. If we kept playing that clip, then we would have seen one more thing, which is one of the men falling before the camera and then getting dragged off. So I think it's safe to say that these 2 guys didn't make it out of this battle unscathed. What they were doing there, what this thing was, and what ultimately happened to them is all unknown though. For all we know, they got dragged back to this thing's lair and they could still be there today. Number 3 on this list is the possession. This next clip is from 2 decades ago in Portugal. The YouTuber Chills has actually covered this video before and even he is pretty terrified of it. The video was filmed on an old camcorder back in 2001. The quality is pretty atrocious, which can be expected from an old camera. The video is centered around several young boys hanging out. It starts off with them just innocently playing playing, but then they end up doing something they really shouldn't have. They try to contact the dead. As we've seen time and time again, regardless of how you attempt to do this, it usually turns out pretty bad. And that's pretty much what happens here with these boys. In the clip that I'm about to show you, one of the boys gets possessed by some type of demon and falls to the ground convulsing.
Então, ai caraças, posso destino.
Nem vos conseguiu, nem vos
Merda, foste, não vai, opa, sério, não vai.
vos conseguiu, não vos conseguiu.
Como é que foste?
Espera aí, André, espera aí, opa, olha aí, cuidado.
Opa, calma-se. Destino, opa, não brinques tu também, meu.
Mas é o meu, foi
Destino.
ainda mais gajo não sabe.
Opa, calma-se mesmo, assim. Destino. Mas, opa, não me meto só.
Mete gozo do caralho.
Eventually the boy gets up and he's no longer himself. His voice is not his own and the words he's saying are not the ones that he would normally say. It's clear that he's been possessed by some type of demon. Now this video of theirs is almost 40 minutes long and that possession took place at the 5-minute mark. After he gets possessed, he runs out of the home and the lights turn off. The kids are obviously super frightened and don't know what's going on. What ultimately happened to this guy and the demon that possessed him, we may never know for sure. Number 2 on this list is the Masked Man. This is really chilling stuff and was apparently released by the police in an attempt to find the people involved. Once again, we have a clip centered around 2 boys and once again, they go missing. This time though it happens in 2005 in Croatia and we also get a far better view of the man responsible for the disappearances in this one as well. The clip starts out innocently enough with 2 lads just messing around in the park. At one point though, they see a dark figure in the distance. At this time though, they aren't on high alert and don't think much of it. Fast forward a bit though and he starts to approach them.
Dobar, daj ga... Nemam pojma, daj ga šutni, daj ga šutni.
Neću se. Mislim da je pijan ili nešto.
Ok, mislim da idemo... Ajmo mi odavde, ajmo.
Ti mu vidio facu? Nema ga, sigurno.
Pa naravno da sam vidio facu, vidi se.
Nisam skužio, čekaj, kaj je bilo?
So at first, they didn't think it was anything, but then the creepy man came after them. This isn't the end of the story though, as the clip continues. The guys are now in a different area recapping what just happened. Soon afterwards though, the man shows up again, and now the gents are starting to really get concerned. They run away and get to an apartment building. This is where we believe the disappearance actually occurs.
Creepy. Koji kat?
5. kat.
Just for a split second we saw him. The man with the mask right in the elevator waiting for the guys. No one knows what happened to these guys and who that masked man was. All we have is this tape and a very sad and scary story. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Paris Catacombs. The Paris Catacombs is one of the creepiest collection of tunnels in the entire world. They were built many years ago and have thousands of dead remains from people back in the day. Many people over the years have speculated on them being extremely haunted, and video footage like this definitely helps add fuel to that fire. The following footage was found on a video recorder deep in the catacombs several years ago.
It's very bizarre. These arrows point in a direction. Occasionally also, he stops to photograph roomfuls of bones, which means that he's very deep inside the catacombs. So basically, he's filming what he's seeing very deep inside the catacombs, other than the point of view shots or pictures of human bones. The catacombs for centuries.
So my dude is deep inside the catacombs, as the narrator of that clip says. All of a sudden though, things start going wrong.
Decide which way to run among all the many different corridors. He's running faster and faster, deeper and deeper into the catacombs. And all of a sudden,
now we don't actually know why he started running, but he just did. Clearly something was chasing him that we can't see on the camera. This is truly all we know though. What was after him and if he managed to survive, that's anyone's guess.
Coming in at number 5, we've got the human experiment. This is a particularly well-known site on the dark web that was active for quite a while before going quiet around 2011. As you may have guessed from the name, this site documents all sorts of human experimentation. Not lab trials or allergy tests though, this is some real Unit 731 stuff. The pages detail experiments done by anonymous doctors and med students, all unethical, despicable, and super unhippocratic. The goal is to prove that some humans are verifiably superior to others. Whether it's a eugenics thing or a super soldier program gone sour, I can't say for sure. These dastardly doctors pick up homeless and unregistered people and subject them to all sorts of horrid conditions, all in the name of science. Some of the tests include starvation, extreme dehydration, testing the limits of pain tolerance, introducing infectious diseases, causing organ damage, transfusing unsafe substances, administering experimental drug trials, sterilization, and subjecting infants to x-rays, heat, and pressure. Apparently a lot of these experiments are covertly conducted in hospitals and the results are shared under the names of other real patients. After the experiment is complete, usually thanks to the death of their subject, the bodies are dissected and disposed of discreetly. At one point, dumpsters behind meat shops were mentioned. Yikes. Like most information available on the dark web, the human experiment has been subject to plenty of scrutiny and skepticism. However, according to some intrepid researchers, some of the data they posted related to their experiments with hypothermia and bleach injections is reasonably realistic. It could very well be an elaborate fantasy, but numbers don't often lie. Like I mentioned earlier, these folks have been radio silent since 2011, but that doesn't mean they've stopped with their experimentation. Maybe they've just stopped posting about it. And finally at number 1, Peter Scully. I really don't want to discuss the grisly details of this, so I'll make it short. Peter Scully is an Australian serial killer made famous for running a pay-per-view site on the dark web. He and his partner Carmen Ann Alvarez would torture and assault young girls on camera for paying viewers. He was eventually brought to justice when 2 potential victims escaped and identified Alvarez, who then confessed and revealed all. Scully is currently serving a life sentence in the Philippines for his crimes, thank goodness. Even a stay in one of the world's most overstuffed prisons is too good for him. When asked why he did it, Scully said, "I don't know why I did it. I wasn't like that in Australia. I'm not sure if that makes it better or worse." Even if he's behind bars, the anonymous viewers on the dark web may very well still be at large.
Number 5, Spree. Coming in first on our list is the newest release and a new age classic that I think, give it a few years, will get the recognition. Spree. It was called American Psycho for the digital age, and I think that fits. Spree stars Joe Keery of Stranger Things and Joe fame, putting down the baseball bat and the hair gel and sitting behind the wheel of a rideshare service, playing a down-on-his-luck young man named Kurt who wants nothing more than to be a viral, famous social media star. Ah, very relatable. But in a sea of unboxing videos, react TikToks, let's plays, confession videos, hashtag challenges, apologies, and top 5 videos about horror movies, Kurt struggles to find any sort of audience for his content whatsoever and decides that the best way to stand out on the internet is to live stream himself snuffing his passengers he picks up in his rideshare app. Okay, you know, to each their own. I'll stick to doing YouTube videos, you do you. Now, Spree is not the smartest movie out there. The social satire is a little basic, to be honest, and it could have done with a lot more fleshing out on its commentary on social media addiction and internet validation, but it makes for a very solid foundation for a flick. It's got a plot that probably would have made for an okay Black Mirror episode, and maybe this movie wouldn't have worked as well if it wasn't for how fun Joe Keery is. Maybe I'm extremely biased because I love the guy, and because like most of the Western world, Steve Harrington is the only reason I watch Stranger Things, but he brings a super fun mania to the social media addicted lunatic. The American Psycho comparison, definitely apt. That's one of my absolute favorite movies of all time for just how sick and like entertainingly evil Patrick Bateman is. You know he's the most reprehensible, unlikable character ever put to film, but Christian Bale is just so damn charismatic you love him. And that's what's happening here. Joe Keery somehow manages to be both convincing as a really scary psychopath, but also oddly sympathetic and earnest. You know, it's the desperation. Have you ever seen a man soaked head to toe in blood, shaking and quivering after doing something unspeakable, and he's still asking you to subscribe to his channel? And speaking of vapid, deranged, dead-eyed internet personalities looking for fame, if you're looking for more scary movie reviews, ghosts, goblins, and aliens, well, click through to Top 5 Scary and subscribe. We've got loads more content with me behind the wheel, but not really, I can't drive. Look at me, I just skate. Number 4, VHS. VHS eventually exploded into a mega hit franchise. I think there's like 5 or 6 of them, not even including spin-offs, but it all comes back to the daring original. VHS was a collection of horror movie shorts, all under the same theme of bizarre found footage horror, and the result is electric. It's like getting to sit at home for your own private horror movie film festival. Now, the collections of shorts featured were all directed by, at the time, fairly underground independent horror movie directors, but now looking back at it, it's like they've assembled a really impressive pantheon of rising horror legends. We got stuff from Adard Wingard, who gave us You're Next in the 2016 Blair Witch reboot, which was okay. We got one from David Bruckner, who would go on to direct The Ritual in the 2022 Hellraiser. And we've got T.I. West, who would make the A24 darling Pearl. So it's a film with nothing but wall-to-wall talent and creativity at their best. It also made the format of being an anthology movie like part of the plot of the movie itself, which I thought was very meta and juicy. A group of career crooks film themselves committing violent and vile acts, and hey, I wonder if they knew the guy from the first movie. And they are commissioned to heist a single object, a mysterious VHS tape. The guys break into the house and find the tape, and the movie is them watching it and then cutting back to whatever strange mystery is happening with the criminals. It's very inventive, it's very immersive, it's very, very cool. Now, all the segments are really cool, but I want to shout out the shorts Tuesday the 17th for being a very high concept idea for a horror movie I can't say I've seen elsewhere, and I can't even say too much without giving it away, but it uses the VHS format really fun. And another shout out for Something Strange Happened to Emily when she was younger. Again, very inventive. It's told exclusively through video calls and the internet, and it features a hearty dose of medical body horror, wild twists, and just like the tiniest little bit of alien stuff. Just like a little bit. Number 3, Lake Mungo. Okay, let's go back to another lesser known one with Lake Mungo. This one's an Australian feature, came out around 2008. Lake Mungo is a healthy, hearty dose of scares and thrills and heart-wrenching family drama. Horror and family drama go hand in hand like the girl from Hereditary and a stop sign. Too soon? That was too far? That was too far? That was too far. In Lake Mungo, we're in the perspective of Matthew Palmer, a young man who has been depressed and broken shortly after his sister's drowning shattered his family's well-being and mental health. However, Matthew begins to see signs of his sister everywhere, feeling her presence in the house with him, and mostly because he keeps seeing her ghost all around. He sets up a surveillance camera system all over their house and begins making a documentary about his experience hunting for his sister and closure. As the investigation as to whether or not his sister really is haunting them, Matthew ends up uncovering family secrets that were long thought buried and finds himself haunted by his sister's loss in a way much grander than any ghost story could. Now, what I really like about this one is pretty much right up until credits, you'll be asking yourself what's happening. Not in a confusing way, like an Inception sort of thing. It's just got a bunch of fun and clever twists that kind of keep you guessing the entire film, keep you asking questions. The film uses the medium well. It allows the audience to go on this journey with the family, where you're there with them and you're asking too what's happening, if it's really a haunting or if it's all just a sad family wanting to see their daughter one last time. It honestly ends up being really heartwarming in a bizarre way. You don't see a lot of horror movies that kind of get you right here. And without spoiling like too much, because I do want you to see it, unlike Hereditary, this one doesn't really have like a happy ending, but it doesn't have a horrifically sad ending. It's kind of bittersweet. It's genuinely very touching. So if you're looking for something to tug at your heartstrings a lot while also making your hair stand on end, you can't go wrong with Lake Mungo. Number 2 is Wreck. Maybe you've already seen this one because it was a smash hit commercially and critically, but if you haven't, man, come on, you really oughta. Wreck is found footage stuff at its best, putting you smack dab in the POV of the action, and it makes you feel like you're both part of this horrifying nightmare, but also kind of like you're like an FBI agent watching evidence recovered years after the fact in a dark room. Wreck follows a film crew that's recording something when they find themselves caught in a way bigger story. When a neighbor attacks someone and bites them, police quarantine off a building for an unknown reason, and you get to experience it all go down in first person as more and more people inside the building seem to be turning into something a little rabid, vicious, and more than a little undead. Wreck does zombies 28 Days Later style, with a pretty interesting twist that I won't give away if you still haven't seen it. They're fast, violent, and unpredictable, and it makes for a super entertaining movie watching the protagonists try and fend off a horde of undead in these really cramped, tight, claustrophobic spaces. There's a lot of excellent choreography work going on here to make sure everything fits in the frame, and the first person view of the camera really makes it feel like you are stuck in there with them too. If you let yourself get into it, you really have a good time with this one. Like, if there was ever really a zombie apocalypse happening, I think we could all agree there'd be gigabytes worth of cell phone footage to go through. So in a bizarre way, this movie about a zombie apocalypse feels oddly realistic. Even just outside of being a good found footage horror movie, Wreck is also just a super good zombie movie if you're into that sort of thing. They remade it into Quarantine for Americans a year later, but if you want my advice, skip the remake and just go for the original, and that is honestly true of like 99.9% of all horror movies anyway. Okay, before we get into number one properly, I wanted to cheat a little bit and break the rules of top 5. Don't tell anybody that I added some extras, but I wanted to shout out a few honorable mentions that I love that didn't make the cut. Blair Witch is going to be the first one. The original, the sequels are all iffy. Number 2 is going to be Troll Hunters. Really fun monsters. Yeah. Paranormal Activity, it's pretty good. It's not super my thing, but it's pretty good. And finally wanted to shout out Host really quick. It's about a seance that happens on Zoom, just came out, very modern. Okay, there we go. So number 1 on the list is going to be Creep. It's got nothing to do with Radiohead, sorry. Coming to us from Patrick Bryce and indie darling Mark Duplass, he takes a break from earnestly mumbling through an indie movie to play a completely chilling, well, the title said it, creep. This movie is basically just watching Mark Duplass be really weird in front of a camera for an hour and 20 minutes. It's a great example of when you can do a lot more with a lot less. This movie is as absolutely bare bones as it gets. There's 2 actors in the entire movie, and they're the 2 guys who wrote and directed the movie. A struggling videographer, Aaron, gets an offer to film a series of personal diaries for a strange client, Joseph, who has an inoperable brain tumor and wants to leave a series of videos behind for his unborn child. Which does sound nice, until Aaron gets there and discovers very quickly something is really off about this, and this isn't going to be a normal job. This movie is all performance, and Duplass crushes it as the bizarre, mysterious Joseph. He plays him really, realistically creepy, like he's the kind of guy you'd meet on a bus and spend the rest of the day thinking about. Like, you know something is wrong with the guy, but you're not really sure in what way and just how afraid of him and how dangerous he might be until it's too late. It's a movie that really gets in your head and gets right under your skin. If you leave the movie terrified of the main character but also very enamored in equal measures, worry not, because Bryce and Duplass agree with you, since there's a Creep 2, which is apparently just as good as the first. I haven't seen it yet, I only have so much time, but I should see it eventually, since there is a Creep 3 in early pre-production stages. So although this guy may be a completely unsettling weirdo, we love this creep and can't get enough. He belongs here. Number 5, 11BX137. A gadget blog named Gadgets with 2 Z's caught international viral attention after they received an exceedingly strange, mysterious CD sent to their address. The blank gold CD has a series of letters and numbers written on it, and no other markers denoting what it could be. The contents of the CD when played are very confusing to say the least, strange and downright horrifying. A hooded figure dressed like a bubonic plague doctor, standing menacingly in what looks like a burnt out, destroyed remnant of a building. He just sorta appears to be standing and communicating in some kind of code. Wandering, posing, revealing a blinking light emanating from the palm of his hand. Its hand, maybe? This thing does kind of have SCP-049 vibes. After about a minute, the hooded figure faces the wall, where he stays for the remainder of the video. But where the video goes from creepy to I might never sleep again levels of horrifying, is that when you run the audio through a spectrogram, a fancy word for a visualization of sound, images begin to appear of tortured bodies and a chilling threat spelling out, "You are already dead." That's the kind of thing you'd love to receive in the mail unmarked. Internet sleuths the net over came together to try and uncover and unmask this nefarious figure in the terrifying video. Now, if it's any comfort for you, the images found in the spectrogram appear to be excerpts from low-rent horror movies, and people found screen captures that matched up pretty well. Speculation ran wild as to what this video could possibly mean. Was there a secret message or a threat behind its cryptic codes? Was it just an advertisement for something? Or just a bored artist trying to get somebody's attention the only way he knew how? Well, eventually, someone did come forward. A man by the name of Parker Warner Wright claims to be the plague doctor in the video, and said the reason for the video was nothing more than an art project to entertain and confuse people. Like most cryptic, scary artists, when he was asked about why the video was made, all he had to say was, "I see my work as waves on the oceans." Thanks. Number 4, I feel fantastic. Now, if you're a student in horrifying, unexplained YouTube clips and legends, perhaps you've been unfortunate enough to run into this one before. But if you haven't, I'm sorry. It's been years since I Feel Fantastic first graced the YouTube algorithm, and yet we're still no closer to understanding, uncovering what's going on here. The video is pretty short and sweet, but I doubt you'll actually be able to finish it. It's a mannequin-looking android named Tara. singing her little song for the camera. Now, she's got the chutzpah down pat, but her natural stage presence could use a little bit of work, maybe her tone too, because she kind of sings discordantly and completely terrifying. It sounds like the kind of thing that you would hear a few minutes before you wake up strapped to an ice-cold slab operating table in a dank basement. The robot, we know, was built by John Bergeron, and that's about all we know. He envisioned his beloved Tara as being an android pop sensation, kind of like what I think Grimes might be. And I really don't want to shut down Tara's career before it's blossomed, but she's got some serious hurdles to solve first. The incredibly unsettling nature of the video caused speculators to run wild with theories about what they were seeing. The most extreme ones go so far as to suggest John was a murderer, and Tara was a mannequin wearing the clothes of his victims. Some suggest he's just a very strange man who wanted a singing companion in his home. In all the years since this clip went viral, we've never got a follow-up on this bizarre video, and I doubt we're ever going to get more answers on this one. I wonder if Tara is still out there, if she's still singing proudly, or if she's rotting in a basement somewhere. I just hope she's still practicing, you know? Number 3, Croatian Stalker. Do you ever feel like someone might be watching you? I know I do, quite a lot. Though it could be because someone is watching me right now, you're watching me right now, but I also just mean in my day-to-day. It's spine-chilling to imagine that somebody's following you without you realizing for gosh knows what, and trailing you around, preventing you from feeling safe. This next video, appropriately and concisely titled Croatian Stalking Tape, is a footage of 2 men recording themselves being pursued by a masked stranger. And according to the uploader, this was the last time either of them were ever seen. The video was uploaded not by anyone in the video, but rather a third party who somehow got a hold of it. And the only evidence we can find for it is that he claims it was recorded in 2005 and is a piece of evidence in a missing persons case for these 2 individuals. In the video, we can clearly see the 2 friends initially enjoying a night on the town together when they're apprehended by a very strange man wearing a sack over his head. You know, normal stuff. At first, the sack-clad man appears, well, I don't want to say friendly per se, but he's not outwardly hostile. Just bizarre, slouching and bending and walking in a way that kind of intones that either it's not a human or it's a human who's had a really long night. The 2 friends then try their best to elude the pursuer, who does not seem keen on letting them go. They try to lose him by making their way to a hotel lobby, where they proceed to call for an elevator to try and find some respite from their stalker, only for the elevator door to open and show them the last thing they could have ever wanted to see, as they are face to face with the sack man and the doors close. If the video uploader is to be believed, this could really be the last thing they ever saw. It was hard to try and find any more information about this video. I did some digging, but I couldn't get any solid answers as to where this came from, who these people were, and if they really went missing. There's some speculation that it could be a very elaborate fake, which is always a possibility. Let me know if anybody's got any intel on this one. Number 2, video dating. Hey, dating is hard. We've all been there. Let me tell you, since that Dahmer show dropped on Netflix, it's not been easy for me. In today's world, it can be so hard to meet that perfect match, especially if you're on the brink of sanity. This video, uploaded and titled Video Dating Tape, was allegedly found in the VCR purchased at a car boot sale, which, if you're not familiar with that term, it's kind of like an English flea market where you sell stuff out of your cars. The VHS is a low-quality clip of someone innocently enough trying to prevent themselves for a video dating service. It starts with a 36-year-old man, Tony, kind of awkwardly explaining what he's all about. You know how they go. We've all been there. Where it starts to get unsettling, though, is the discordant screaming that we can hear in the background. And the guy in the video seems like he's mentally degrading very fast.
Someone that can...
He starts smacking himself in the head in frustration, tripping over his words, and accidentally revealing probably a lot more than he means to. Especially when he starts to say funny, flirty little things like, I'm looking for someone who doesn't mind disappearing for a long time, and cute little sweet nothings like, I'm looking for someone who likes a long walk on the beach, and someone I can spend the rest of their life with. Now the video is almost too perfect, you know? And the only thing that makes you wonder if maybe it's not a fake is just how convincingly creepy this 36-year-old bachelor is acting. If anyone has got some answers for this one, please let me know, because this one really did send a chill down my spine trying to watch it. And hey, if anyone wants, at the end of the video, Tony left his address if you'd like to reach out to him, if you like pina coladas getting caught in the rain and want to spend the rest of your life with him. Number 1, Sad Satan. Sad Satan is a deeply mysterious, lost video game, allegedly emanating from the dark web, and it's wrapped in intrigue and controversy and has all the makings of a great classic internet urban legend. The game first came into the mainstream when the owner of the now defunct Obscure Horror Corner YouTube channel was sent a link to this strange game, with the sender saying that they found it on a deep web page where users could post random files. The actual game's contents are deeply disturbing and unsettling. It truly feels like something you were never meant to see. There's not a whole lot of depth to the gameplay. It just features the player wandering down maze after maze of monochromatic hallways. A strange audio plays all around you from all sorts of sources, like an old Swedish number station, disembodied, blood-curdling screams. In some versions of the game, there are enemies that appear to be ghostly children figures standing in the maze with you. Images flash repeatedly through the gameplay, featuring pictures of notorious criminals. Audio from recordings of criminals like Charles Manson can be heard and seen. The game ends rather abruptly. If you run into any of the haunted children in the game, they'll end you and the game will be over. The mystery behind Sad Satan is arguably bigger than the game itself. Where did it come from? To date, no one truly knows who developed it or why or what their intentions even were. After the game became big thanks to the Obscure Horror Corner, there was a drove of interest in the game, leading to sinister double copies being passed around online masquerading as the real one. And these variants would include things like illegal content inside the game or dangerous malware, as users had reported that their computers would act sluggish or even outright shut down irreversibly after downloading the widely released copy. The Obscure Horror channel shut down after Sad Satan started to get attention, leading to a ton of speculation there. Was the original uploader of the video the creator of the game and he was trying to garner some sort of viral reputation for it? Or did he feel some sort of guilt or responsibility for getting this game out into the mainstream? It's been years and we're still no closer to getting any of the answers on this.
Number 5 on this list is Fixed Match Buy-In. Fixed Match Buy-In is a way for people who visit this site to bet on sports matches around the globe that are actually fixed and their outcome has been previously determined. Maybe for some of you this isn't scary, but for me, a guy who literally runs his own YouTube channel / podcast about the Toronto Blue Jays baseball team, my channel's called Blue Jays Today, feel free to check it out, just a mildly shameless plug. But anyways, for me and for sports fans in general, this is some pretty serious stuff. For the longest time, fixed sports games have been something that the public has speculated upon. The authorities who run said sports games have vehemently denied such allegations, but this fixed match buy-in proves that these allegations are real. The thought catalog says that the FMBI fixes matches with at least a 2-to-1 payout. It also requires a $20,000 minimum buy-in, with 50% of your winnings going toward the site's service fees, though after the fixed match, the $20,000 buy-in is then returned to your Bitcoin account and everyone wins except for the athletes. Although FMBI cannot prove its authenticity, as doing so would require to reveal transaction details or match information that could jeopardize their network, they claim to be quite busy with weekly matches in several different sports. They say that they're involved in multiple sports, but the one that has the most potential is probably European football. For the longest time, people have believed that the league owners have a say in how things play out and who comes out on top. The nature of the sport makes it one of the easiest ones to tamper with, considering how subjective penalties are and that most matches are usually decided by a single goal. As a sports fan, I hate the thought that matches might be fixed, but based on this, might have to come to terms with it. Also, side note, but comment down below if you guys are a sports fan and the team that you support. Would love to hear. Number 4 on this list is cheap swatting service. Swatting, according to Thought Catalog, is the act of obtaining a victim's IP address and then anonymously and falsely reporting a critical incident such as a threat or hostage situation to that location. The SWAT team then arrives on scene, kicks down a few doors, and generally disrupts everyone's day while costing taxpayers thousands of dollars, and it's huge on YouTube right now. Though the effect have extended all the way to politicians and pop stars, most instigators and victims are gamers who get attacked as a result of a bitter online rivalry. Swatting is also a service that you can buy on the deep web through cheap swatting service. CSS offers 3 options for the customer: $5 for a mild situation, $10 for a little worse where they'll bring many people and raid them, and then $20 for the SWAT team to come and they can just do anything. Despite penalties of up to 25 years to life, stiff sentences for the convicted have done little to curb this growing trend. This is because swatters are able to keep risks and subsequently service prices low by relying on simple and difficult to trace methods of police contact. Disposable phones, phone number encryption, and internet call services such as Skype have all proven cheap and invaluable tools for the common swatter. I want to just emphasize what they said about the $20 option there, folks. They can do anything. A SWAT team will literally show up to your home, and if they perceive a threat, you could actually be killed. Any number of things could go wrong with this whole scenario. Not to mention that this is a horrible allocation of resources, and if an incident occurred where we actually did need the SWAT team while someone was swatting, then whoever actually needs them is going to be in serious trouble. This is also the perfect way to frame someone for a crime if you ever did want to do such a thing. Plant some evidence and then call the SWAT team in and bam, they're done. This is way too much power for a standard person to have and seems like a really dangerous way to spend 20 bucks. Number 3 on this list is Atlantic carding. The Thought Catalog writes, once again, roughly 11 million Americans fall victim to credit card theft each year. Atlantic Card isn't helping. AC is a service that sells credit card information, addresses, and social security numbers. The more money you're willing to spend, the better your info. Big spenders can even get access to business accounts and infinite credit cards with no limit. Price ranges between $5 and $80 depending on the depth of information sold. It's reasonable pricing for the potential destruction of a stranger's life. The site boasts a credit card validity rate upward of 95%, anonymous communication via PGP encryption, and untraceable Bitcoin transaction. But keep in mind, if something looks too good to be true, it probably is. Agencies have been known to stage sting operations on the deep web with fake sites, such as 2010's Carter Profit. It's that easy, guys. Just drop a few bucks, and with that you can steal someone's identity and their credit card and put them in really serious debt. I'm so ignorant in regards to credit card theft and hacking and all the ins and outs of how it works, and I think that honestly makes this a little bit scarier. Like the fact that there's just a whole site where you can buy someone's card for $80 seems kind of ridiculous. What if we get unlucky and the card that they buy happens to be you or me? Granted, they probably look at mine and think to themselves why they'd want such a sad looking thing, but that is a complete, total other story. Just be aware that somebody is just a click away from stealing your entire identity and totally altering your whole life. Number 2 on this list is the cookbook. During my research of the dark web, there were several stories about one site in particular that is especially gruesome and disgusting. It's a site dedicated to cooking, however it doesn't use your conventional ingredients. Rather than how to cook a quality pork roast or a good steak, this site specifically looks on how to cook one thing: women. Yeah, that's right guys, this site is 100% dedicated to cooking females. Metro writes, the most disturbing site we found was a comprehensive guide for cooking women. We're not talking about a short joke here. This page had information on what body types to use for specific cuts, how to prepare these cuts, and how to cook the girl so she lives as long as possible. Now I haven't actually seen exactly what this site is, and I'm honestly glad I haven't witnessed it in person because this is just next levels of sadistic stuff right here. We're talking about a full-on website that resembles something run by the Food Network except for humans. On this site it said that you can find close to 100 different recipes. I think the scariest part about this is that it isn't a joke site either. This is a fully real site that takes itself seriously. And if the owners of this site take it seriously, then it also means that there are users who take it seriously and probably follow said recipes on a regular basis. It almost seems too sick and twisted to be real, but I'm sad to report that this is an actual thing that you could discover on the dark web. And finally, number 1 on this list is red rooms. This entry is truly just so sick, guys. Science and Technology writes, red rooms can be essentially classified as video portals. They are hidden pages in which the viewer can watch live a torture of a person and participate in such torture by contributing with ideas or requests. Depending on the money you pay, you can participate to a greater or lesser extent. Payment is made by using cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin to guarantee anonymity and avoid problems. This is honestly horrible, but the sad thing is this is kind of a tame definition of what actually goes on there. Murder, taking one's own life, horrific sexual things have all been said to go down on this dark portal of the internet. Nowadays, it's even been utilized by some organizations where they'll perform executions on there. Now, there are some beliefs that these red rooms are just an internet hoax and they don't actually exist. And frankly, I hope that that's the case, but there have been a lot of stories of people stumbling upon them and witnessing firsthand the type of horrific stuff that goes on. This is a horrible part of the internet and something that I hope that you never need to discover for yourself.